I never thought this would happen to me. I was just a regular guy, living a regular life, until one day everything changed. My name's Eric, and I'm a 34-year-old mechanic from a small town in Kentucky. My wife, Katie, and I had been married for 8 years. She was beautiful, funny, and we had a life together that, on the surface, seemed perfect. But the cracks in our marriage started showing, and I didn't even see it coming. Katie and I met when I was 26, and she was 23. We got married about a year after we met, and things were great at first. At least, that's what I told myself. I had a steady job at a local garage, and she worked at a small boutique down the street. We didn't have a lot of money, but we were comfortable. We didn't need much, just each other. We didn't have any kids, but we had a dog, Max, who was our little family. But recently, something started to change. I didn't know what it was, but I could feel it. Katie, who used to be the most down-to-earth person I knew, started acting different. She became more distant. She was constantly on her phone, texting and laughing at things I couldn't see. And when I asked her what she was up to, she would give me these vague answers. She said she was talking to her friend Jenna, or that she was planning something for work, but her explanations never quite added up. I couldn't put my finger on it, but it was like she was hiding something from me. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe she was just stressed. Maybe she had a new friend or something. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. But then I started noticing small things that felt off. She'd dress up for what seemed like no reason, wearing clothes that I hadn't seen her wear before. Tight jeans, low-cut tops, stuff that wasn't really her style. She didn't usually put that much effort into what she wore unless we were going out somewhere nice. But these were just casual days. And when I asked her about it, she'd give me some excuse about a sale at the store or meeting up with friends. But the real kicker came when I started noticing the little lies. She'd say she was going to run errands, but then take forever to come back. When I asked where she went, she'd give me vague answers, just around, or I ran into someone at the store so I lost track of time. It wasn't like her. Katie always told me everything, or at least she used to. Then one night, I overheard something. I was sitting on the couch watching TV, and Katie was in the kitchen, talking on the phone. Her voice was soft and playful, like she was laughing at some inside joke. I could hear her laughing. This was the kind of laugh she only had when we first started dating, when she was happy and carefree. But when I asked her who she was talking to, she quickly shut it down. "It's just Jenna," she said, rolling her eyes like I was being ridiculous. But something didn't sit right with me. It wasn't just the laugh. It was how she acted when I asked. She was defensive, almost irritated that I'd even ask. The more I thought about it, the more I started to question things. Why was she acting like this? Why was she so secretive? I tried to dismiss it, tell myself I was being paranoid. But then I started noticing other things. There was a shift in our intimacy. We had always had a healthy sex life, but lately, she'd been distant in bed. She'd act tired, or say she wasn't in the mood. And when we did have sex, it felt off. She wasn't really there, her mind somewhere else. I felt like I was just going through the motions while she wasn't fully present. I tried to ignore it. I didn't want to believe it. But the signs were adding up, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I started watching her more closely, trying to catch her in some lie, something that would tell me what was really going on. Then one day, I found something. It wasn't much, just a small slip of paper in her purse, a ticket stub for a basketball game. I didn't think much of it at first, but when I asked her about it, she looked like she'd been caught off guard. "Oh, it's just something Jenna dragged me to," she said quickly, like it was no big deal. Her nephew's on the team. It's no big deal. But something in the way she said it bothered me. Katie didn't care about basketball. I'd never seen her watch a game in the 8 years we'd been together. She never talked about sports. Why would she go to one? And why keep it a secret? That was the moment I knew something wasn't right. I wasn't sure what exactly, but I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. There was more to the story, and I was going to find out what it was. It all started so innocently. One night, Katie casually mentioned she was going to a local basketball game. She said it was to support Jenna's nephew, who played on the team, but I didn't think much of it at first. Katie wasn't exactly the sporty type. She'd never cared about basketball, or any sport, really. Her idea of a good time was a shopping spree or binge-watching reality shows, not sitting through a sweaty, noisy game in a gym full of strangers. So when she told me she was going, I just assumed it was a one-off thing, maybe a favor to Jenna or just a change of pace. But then the games started to happen more frequently. It wasn't just once in a while. It became a regular thing. Every Tuesday or Thursday night, Katie would come home from work, change into something more casual yet sharp, and head out for the game. She started looking forward to it. Her tone changed when she talked about it. At first, she said, it was all right, just something to do. But after a few weeks, she was talking about the games like they were the highlight of her week. She'd walk in the door excited, her eyes lit up, and she'd immediately start telling me about the game. I'd half listen, mostly out of obligation. Katie had always been a great conversationalist, but I'd never been the type to care much about high school basketball. Still, the enthusiasm in her voice struck me as odd. She wasn't just telling me about the game. She was recounting plays, talking about players like she'd been watching basketball for years. "Did you see Derek's dunk last night?" she asked one evening, practically bouncing as she set her purse down. "He made the most insane move in the third quarter. Totally a game changer." Derek. I had no idea who Derek was, but she kept bringing him up. At first, I thought maybe he was just some player she was casually following. But the more she mentioned him, the more I started to sense that this wasn't just about basketball. She'd talk about him in this way, like he was special. "Derek's really such a great guy. He's so talented, so smart." Every time she'd say something like that, I'd just nod, confused, because I didn't know this guy. I couldn't figure out why she was so obsessed with him, why he was the only player she'd ever mention. A few weeks in, Katie started making excuses to go to the games, even when I wasn't home. "I'm meeting Jenna and some of the other girls there tonight," she'd say, brushing it off when I asked if I could tag along. The first time I didn't think much of it. Girls' nights were fine. But then it started happening more and more. Every game, she was going with friends. She wasn't inviting me, and she wasn't telling me much about what she was doing there. I asked her once, "Why don't you want me to come with you? I mean, if it's just a fun thing, what's the harm in me tagging along?" Her reaction was quick and defensive. "Oh, you wouldn't like it. It's just a bunch of us girls having fun, and honestly, you'd probably be bored. Plus, you don't even like basketball, remember?" I had to admit, she had a point. I wasn't into sports. But her tone, the way she dismissed the idea so quickly, didn't sit well with me. It felt like she was keeping something from me, something I wasn't supposed to know. The more she went, the more she changed. She started dressing up differently when she went to the games. More stylish, more eye-catching. I had never seen her wear some of the things she wore to the games. Tight jeans, low-cut tops, things that seemed to scream for attention. It wasn't just casual clothes anymore. She was dressing up as if she were going out to impress someone. I mentioned it once, but she shrugged it off. "Just felt like wearing something different tonight," she'd say with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. But I could tell. Something wasn't right. Katie was always one to wear what was comfortable, and now she was wearing clothes that didn't match her usual style. Her behavior became more erratic, too. When she came home from the games, she'd be on a high, talking nonstop about Derek and the players. She was so into it now, it was like a whole new part of her life. "Derek's really going places," she said one night after a game, practically glowing. "I think he's going to go pro someday." I had no idea what was going on, but I didn't like it. I mean, Derek wasn't even someone I recognized. He wasn't a friend of mine, and I didn't know anyone in her circle who talked about him. Yet, here was Katie, obsessed with him, constantly talking about him like he was her best friend, or worse, something more. I started to notice the little things. The phone calls late at night, the text messages she wouldn't let me see. Whenever I asked her about it, she'd snap back with some excuse, telling me it was nothing, just catching up with friends. But I knew better. I couldn't put my finger on it, but something about her sudden obsession with Derek, with these basketball games, didn't feel right. One night, as I was flipping through TV channels, I caught a glimpse of her checking her phone. She had a huge smile on her face, like she was reading something funny. Then, she quickly locked her phone and threw it on the coffee table. I had to stop myself from saying anything, but it was all I could think about. Katie had always been open with me. Why the secrecy now? Something was going on, and I was starting to feel like I was the last to know. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that this wasn't just about basketball. Derek wasn't just a player to her. He was something else. And I was about to find out exactly what. I couldn't keep ignoring the signs any longer. Katie's obsession with Derek, her sudden enthusiasm for basketball, the way she kept brushing me off when I asked about her nights out. It was all starting to add up. I had to know what was going on. So when I saw that there was another big game coming up, I decided it was time to go with her. I wasn't going to let her get away with all the secrecy. I casually mentioned that I'd be joining her for the next game. "Oh, it's just going to be the girls and me," Katie said almost too quickly. "You wouldn't enjoy it." But this time, I didn't back off. "I don't know, I might like it. It's just a basketball game, right? Besides, you've been going to all of them lately, so why not let me see what all the fuss is about?" She hesitated for a moment, and I could tell she wasn't too thrilled about the idea. But after a few seconds, she sighed. "Fine, whatever. But don't say I didn't warn you." That night, we went to the game. As we walked into the gym, I couldn't help but feel a little nervous. I kept my eyes on Katie, watching how she seemed so animated, so excited. It was like she was a completely different person, absorbed in the game and chatting excitedly about the players. Derek's name kept popping up in her conversations with the people sitting around us. "Derek's playing so well tonight," she kept saying, practically glowing every time his name came up. I barely knew who this guy was, but I could tell he was becoming more than just a player to her. After the game ended, Katie made a quick excuse to leave. "I'm going to meet some of the girls," she said, already starting to walk away. "You head home. I'll catch up with you later." I wasn't buying it. The sudden rush to get away from me felt too deliberate. As she disappeared into the crowd, I felt that sinking feeling in my stomach. I had to follow her. I decided to go to the locker room area. I knew she wouldn't be there for long. She was probably waiting for Derek. Something told me that tonight was the night I'd get the confirmation I needed. I walked quietly through the corridors of the gym, making sure I wasn't seen. When I reached the locker room hallway, I paused. I wasn't sure what I was about to witness, but I had to see it for myself. Slowly, I peeked around the corner, and there they were, Katie and Derek. Katie was standing close to him, laughing and talking like they were old friends, but the way they were interacting, it wasn't just friendly. Derek's hand was on her back, his fingers lightly tracing her spine as she leaned into him. I didn't need to hear the words to understand what was going on between them. And then it happened. Katie tilted her head up, and Derek leaned down. They kissed. It wasn't a quick, accidental brush of the lips. It was a full kiss, deep and intimate. Katie didn't pull away. She pressed herself closer to him, her hands moving up to his chest as if she'd done this 100 times before. The way they kissed, the way they held each other, it was everything I feared and more. My heart sank into my stomach as I stood there, frozen in place. The woman I loved, my wife, was kissing another man. No, not just any man, but Derek, the one she'd been talking about nonstop for weeks. I'd been right all along. There was no denying it now. I didn't know how long I stood there watching them, but it felt like hours. It was like I was seeing my whole life unravel in front of me. I wanted to scream, to rush over and confront them, but I couldn't move. I was paralyzed by the truth in front of me. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I backed away, retreating down the hallway without a sound. I needed to get out of there. I needed to think. As I walked out of the gym and into the parking lot, my mind was racing. I couldn't believe what I'd just seen. Katie, my wife, was having an affair with this basketball player, right under my nose. The trust I'd had in her, the life we'd built together, it all felt like it had been shattered in an instant. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut. I didn't know what to do next, but one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let this slide. I had seen enough. It was time to confront Katie, and everything was about to change. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? I kept replaying the images of Katie and Derek kissing over and over in my head. The way they looked at each other, the closeness they shared, it was clear they'd been hiding something for a while. Katie's sudden passion for basketball, her secrecy, the way she dressed up to go to these games, it all made sense now. but seeing it, witnessing the betrayal firsthand, was like a punch to the gut. The next morning, when Katie came home, I could barely look at her. My chest felt tight with anger and disbelief. She walked in, as usual, full of energy, talking about how great the game was, how much fun she had. But I could barely hear her. "Did you enjoy the game?" I asked, my voice barely controlled. She didn't catch on to my tone right away. "Oh, it was amazing. Derek was on fire tonight. He's really got potential, you know?" She grinned at me like nothing was wrong. I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Katie, you need to stop lying to me." Her smile faltered for a second, but she quickly recovered. "What are you talking about?" "I saw you, Katie," I said, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and hurt. "I saw you kiss Derek after the game. I saw everything." She froze. Her face went pale, and for a second, I could see the panic in her eyes. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. "I can't believe you did this," I continued, my anger growing with each word. "All the lies, the secrets. You've been seeing him behind my back, and I had no idea. Why didn't you just tell me?" Katie's eyes filled with tears, but I could tell it was more out of guilt than real regret. She took a step toward me, but I backed away. I wasn't interested in her excuses anymore. "I never meant for this to happen," she said, her voice shaky. "Derek and we've just become really close. He's been such a good friend, and—" "Stop. Stop with the excuses," I shouted, cutting her off. "I saw you two together. You were kissing him. How long has this been going on, Katie? How long have you been lying to me?" Her face crumbled, and she finally admitted, "It's been a few months. I didn't mean for it to happen, but I don't know. It just did." I couldn't believe my ears. A few months? This whole time, she'd been sneaking around with him, hiding it from me like I was some kind of fool. The trust one had in her was completely gone. "I can't believe you," I said, my voice cold. "You lied to my face. You told me everything was fine, but all along, you were seeing him behind my back. What else have you been hiding, Katie?" "I'm sorry. Okay. I never meant for this to get so out of hand," she said, her voice starting to crack. "But I don't know what I was thinking." You don't know what you were thinking?" I couldn't keep the disbelief from my voice. "You were thinking about him, weren't you? This whole time, you were thinking about Derek. I wasn't enough for you." She tried to reach out to me again, but I stepped back, shaking my head. "No, I can't do this anymore. This is over, Katie. You betrayed me. You broke my trust." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. Katie's face twisted in panic, but I was done. I couldn't even look at her without feeling disgusted. "I want a divorce," I said, each word like a dagger. Katie's face drained of color. "What? No, please don't do this. We can fix this. I'll do anything. Just don't leave me." But I was already done. There was no fixing this. Not after everything I'd seen. "I'm not going to stay in a marriage where I'm constantly lied to and betrayed," I said firmly. "This is over." She collapsed into tears, but I couldn't feel sorry for her. She'd made her choice when she decided to kiss Derek, when she decided to sneak around behind my back. She didn't care about me, not like I cared about her. As I walked out of the room, I heard her sobbing behind me, but I didn't turn back. I had to go through with this, no matter how much it hurt. I couldn't live a lie anymore. The next few weeks were a blur of legal papers, arguments, and silent nights. But the divorce was finalized. Katie left, and I was free from the woman who had betrayed me. I didn't know what to feel anymore. Part of me was relieved, but part of me still hurt. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I trusted, was gone, replaced by someone else, someone I didn't even recognize. And now, the only thing I could think about was how I was going to make her, and Derek, pay for everything they had done. The anger didn't just go away after the divorce. It festered. It gnawed at me every day, filling me with a need for revenge. Katie had broken me, humiliated me, and betrayed me in the worst way. But Derek? He'd taken something too. He'd stolen my wife, and he had the audacity to pretend like it was all just some innocent mistake. I couldn't just sit back and let them go unpunished. The more I thought about it, the more the idea consumed me. I knew I couldn't just let it slide. The entire town, everyone who'd ever known me, had to see them for what they were. Not just cheaters, but manipulators, liars, and, worst of all, cowards who thought they could get away with hurting people without facing consequences. I started planning, making sure I covered every angle. I still had the pictures, the ones I'd taken of Katie and Derek together after the game. They weren't much, just a few shots of them standing too close, kissing in a way that was unmistakable. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough to expose them. And I wasn't going to stop there. I remembered the way Katie had brushed me off whenever I asked her about the games. She'd lied to me so many times. She was going to pay for that. The next thing I did was gather more evidence. I reached out to a few of the people who had been at the game, the ones who knew Derek and Katie's special relationship. I got statements from people who had seen them together, who'd noticed the way Katie practically drooled over Derek whenever he was near. It was time for everyone to know the truth. I crafted my plan like a careful surgeon, each cut intentional and precise. First, I needed to expose them online to get the word out. Social media was the fastest way to ruin someone's reputation these days. So I wrote up a post. No, not just a post, a manifesto of betrayal. I detailed every little thing that had happened. The affair, the lies, the way they'd manipulated me, the way Katie had sneaked around behind my back while I trusted her. I included the photos, the ones that made it clear she'd been involved with Derek, no matter how she tried to spin it. I had every detail, every lie she'd told me. It felt good to write it all down. It felt like a release, like I was getting back everything they'd taken from me. I didn't waste any time. I hit send. The moment I did, I felt a sick satisfaction that I hadn't felt in weeks. The post went live, and it didn't take long for it to spread. Friends, family, people from work, they all shared it. The scandal spread like wildfire through the town. Everyone knew now. Everyone knew what Katie had done. Everyone knew about Derek. The whispers started almost immediately. People couldn't stop talking about it. They had all been shocked at how Derek was the golden boy of the town, the star athlete everyone admired. But now, all of a sudden, the truth came crashing down. He wasn't some hero. He was just a man who'd slept with my wife. Katie tried to call me, of course. I knew what she wanted. She begged, she cried, she even tried to guilt-trip me into taking it down. But I didn't answer. There was no more us. She didn't deserve my attention or my forgiveness. The whole point of this was to make sure she knew there was no way out. She had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. But Derek? Oh, Derek took it even harder than I thought he would. Within hours, the local media picked up the story. My phone was buzzing nonstop with messages from reporters. Is it true that Derek Reynolds, the star basketball player, was having an affair with your wife? They asked. I didn't waste time denying it. I told them everything. How I had caught them together, how Katie had been lying to me for months. I even sent them the post I had written, the screenshots of the photos, and the testimonies from the people who'd seen them together. The newspaper published the article first thing the next morning. Local basketball star's career in jeopardy after affair with married woman exposed. It was everywhere. The article went viral, and the consequences for Derek came fast. His coaches were furious. The university's athletic department issued a statement distancing themselves from him, saying they would review the situation. Sponsors dropped him one by one. The fans who had once adored him now turned on him, calling him a fraud, a cheater, a disgrace. I had thought Derek's career might be in trouble, but the way things unfolded, it was even worse than I imagined. He couldn't escape it. It wasn't just a scandal. It was a career-ending scandal. The media ripped into him, and it wasn't long before his name was being dragged through the mud on every platform. His teammates barely spoke to him. Coaches were questioning his commitment to the team, and his future in basketball was uncertain at best. The thing is, Derek didn't just lose his spot on the team. He lost everything. His reputation, his future, his career. All of it crumbled in a matter of days. I sat back and watched as the once promising player's life fell apart. As for Katie, she didn't fare much better. The town's gossip mill worked overtime. Friends turned on her. People who once admired her, people who had no idea what she'd been doing behind closed doors, started to treat her like an outcast. It was no longer about how beautiful she was or how charming she could be. It was about what she had done. It was about the woman who had slept with her husband's best friend and who thought she could get away with it. The shame became unbearable for her. She tried to salvage what little dignity she had left by claiming I was just bitter, but nobody bought it. She had betrayed me, and now everyone knew. I didn't need to lift a finger after that. The town had turned on her. Her social circle shrank. She'd spent years building up this perfect image, and I had just torn it all down with a few clicks of a button. The best part of it all? Watching them both fall from grace. Katie and Derek thought they could get away with it. They thought they could have their fun and walk away unscathed. But they didn't realize that I wasn't just going to sit back and let them destroy my life. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the one in control. And now, with everything out in the open, there was no going back for either of them. I made sure of that. It felt good to finally take back what they had taken from me. And in the end, that's all that mattered.